It does not happen all at once. It happens in small moments that you almost miss. The friend who used to suggest dinner every few weeks goes quiet after you mention you are not eating out much anymore. The group chat that used to include you in every vacation plan starts sending messages you hear about after the fact. The family member who nods slowly when you explain your investment strategy and then says, well, not everyone can do that, as if what you are doing requires something you were born with. And they were not. The partner who changes the subject every time the budget comes up. The colleague who calls you lucky when you mention your savings rate, even though they earn exactly what you earn. And you have been doing this for 3 years without telling anyone. None of these moments are dramatic. None of them are confrontations. None of them are easy to name out loud without sounding ungrateful or paranoid. But if you have been deliberately building wealth, paying off debt, investing, consistently making different choices than the people around you, there is a good chance you have felt this. The specific, quiet social friction of doing the right thing financially, while the people closest to you get subtly, inexplicably weird about it. And nobody warned you it was coming. My name is Nick and I spend a genuinely unreasonable amount of time thinking about the psychology of money, specifically the places where building wealth intersects with the human need to belong, be accepted, and stay connected to the people we love. If you have ever felt slightly penalized socially for making good financial decisions, hit subscribe because today we're going inside the 4 specific reasons why the people closest to you get weird when you start building wealth. And I will tell you right now what all 4 are. The mirror effect, the identity threat, the equality disruption, and the loyalty test. 4 mechanisms. All of them psychological. None of them about money. All of them about what happens to people when someone near them starts to change. Before we go into each one, let me introduce you to 2 people. Jordan and Sam have been close friends since college. Same city, similar jobs, similar salaries. They have always existed at roughly the same financial level, same kinds of apartments, same restaurants, same vacations. The friendship has always felt easy partly because of that shared financial context. Nobody ever had to feel awkward about who could afford what. The baseline was the same. 3 years ago, Jordan made a decision. Not a dramatic one. Just a quiet structural shift, automated investments, reduced dining out, a deliberate plan with a specific direction. Nothing Jordan talked about much. Just a private change in how money was being handled. Over the following 3 years, nothing dramatic happened between them. No fight. No obvious moment of rupture. But the friendship started to feel different. Slightly harder. Slightly more effortful. Sam started declining Jordan's suggestions and proposing alternatives that didn't fit the budget. Jordan started feeling vaguely guilty about things that had never required guilt before. The ease that had always characterized the friendship started to feel like something that had to be maintained rather than something that just existed. Neither of them could fully explain what had changed. The answer was not money. The answer was 4 psychological mechanisms that operate quietly and powerfully whenever financial divergence begins between people who care about each other. Mechanism number 1. The mirror effect. This is the most common mechanism and the least discussed one. And it is the hardest to name without sounding arrogant, which is partly why it almost never gets talked about directly. Here is how it works. Human beings constantly use the people around them to calibrate their own choices and behaviors. This is not vanity, it is a deeply embedded social function documented extensively in psychology research. Leon Festinger called it social comparison theory in 1954, and the core finding is simple: people evaluate their own opinions, abilities, and choices by comparing them to the people they can see. We do not measure ourselves against abstract standards. We measure ourselves against the specific people in our immediate orbit. When you and the people around you are making roughly the same financial choices, this comparison is comfortable. Nobody is implicitly challenging anyone else. The mirror reflects back a version of normal that everyone in the group can recognize. When you start making meaningfully different financial choices, when you start building something while they are not, the mirror changes. Every time they see you, the comparison becomes slightly uncomfortable. Not because you said anything, not because you judged them, but because your presence makes the comparison happen whether anyone wants it to or not. You are not doing anything to them. You are simply existing near them in a way that makes their own choices more visible than they were before. And the most natural human response to an uncomfortable comparison is to reduce exposure to the thing causing it, which is you. Sam does not know this is what is happening. Sam just knows that lately the friendship feels slightly harder and cannot explain why. Jordan does not know why a friendship that used to feel effortless now requires more maintenance. The mirror effect is invisible to both of them, and it is doing real damage to a real relationship without either person being able to name it. The practical implication of this is specific and important. The discomfort your financial progress causes in the people around you is almost never about you personally. It is about what your presence makes them feel about themselves, and feeling defensive or confused or guilty about that discomfort, as if you have done something wrong by making good decisions, is a response to a mechanism, not a response to a moral situation. You have not wronged anyone by building wealth. You have become an uncomfortable mirror. Those are not the same thing. Mechanism number 2. The identity threat. This one is more specific and operates at a deeper level than the mirror effect. It is not just about comparison. It is about who people understand themselves to be. Here is the mechanism. Most of us carry a financial identity, a set of beliefs about what kind of person we are with money, what our relationship to wealth is, and what the people in our group are like financially. Often this identity is not conscious. It just exists as a background assumption. I am not the kind of person who talks about money. We are a family that does not prioritize material things. My friends and I live in the real world, not the investment strategy world. These identities are real and they matter to people even when they're never explicitly stated. When you start building wealth deliberately, when you start talking about financial strategy, making different choices, becoming visibly more intentional about money, you are disrupting the shared financial identity of the people around you. Not by saying anything about them, not by criticizing their choices, just by being visibly different from the shared identity the group has always held. The group identity says, we are people who do not obsess about money. Your behavior says, one of us does now. The identity threat is real and it triggers real defensiveness, even in people who love you. This is why the family member says not everyone can do that when you explain your investment strategy. The statement sounds like it is about practical limitations. It is actually a defense of a shared identity that your behavior is threatening. If what you are doing is achievable and normal and not dependent on luck, then the question becomes, why are we not doing it? And that question is threatening to an identity built around the belief that this is not the kind of thing we do. This is also why the partner changes the subject when the budget comes up. Not because they do not care about financial security, but because engaging with the budget means engaging with a version of their own identity that they have not yet accepted. The person who tracks spending and invests deliberately is not the person they have understood themselves to be. Becoming that person requires a kind of identity revision that feels more threatening than the financial conversation itself. Understanding this mechanism changes how you approach the conversation. The argument is never really about money. It is about identity. And identity changes require safety, time, and a reason to want to revise, not a presentation of better information. Mechanism number 3. The equality disruption. This is the quietest mechanism and in some ways the most powerful. It operates almost entirely below the surface of the relationship, and almost never gets named even when it is doing the most damage. Many friendships and many partnerships rest on an implicit assumption of equality. Not perfect equality in every dimension, but a rough sense of sameness. We are at roughly the same place in life. We face roughly the same constraints. We make roughly the same kinds of choices. This sameness is not just comfortable, it is the structural foundation of how a lot of relationships maintain their balance. The unspoken contract of the friendship is, we are peers. We are in the same boat. Neither of us is ahead of the other in a way that changes the fundamental nature of what this relationship is. Wealth building disrupts this assumption. Slowly, quietly, without anyone deciding to disrupt it. As your net worth grows and your financial options expand, you and the people around you are no longer in exactly the same boat. You still love each other. You still enjoy each other's company. But the implicit peer contract starts to feel different. Sometimes this shows up as resentment the person cannot name. Sometimes it shows up as a subtle shift in power dynamics. The friend who used to feel equal starts to feel slightly dependent in ways they did not before and do not like. Sometimes it shows up as preemptive distance, pulling back before the gap gets wide enough to be undeniable. Jordan started noticing this in specific moments. A dinner where the check came in. Sam paid the smaller amount without commenting, which had never happened before. A conversation about a trip where Jordan said yes immediately, and Sam went quiet in a way that felt different from logistical consideration. Small moments where the implicit peer contract was being renegotiated without anyone saying so out loud. The equality disruption is painful precisely because it is not about anything either person chose. Jordan did not choose to disrupt the peer contract. Sam did not choose to feel disrupted by it. The financial divergence happened, and the relationship had to find a new equilibrium that neither person had agreed to and neither person fully understood was necessary. Quick to check before we get to the fourth mechanism, and this is the one I most want you to sit with honestly before we continue. Think about the specific relationships in your life where you have felt this friction. Not the dramatic ones. The quiet ones. The friend who got slightly harder to reach. The family member who got slightly more pointed in their comments. The partner who became slightly more resistant to financial conversations. Name the relationship in your head. We will come back to it. Mechanism number 4. The loyalty test. This is the one that gets dressed up as concern but is actually fear. And it is the mechanism that most often looks like an attack but is actually a plea. Here is how it works. When someone close to you starts building wealth, starts making visibly different choices, starting to diverge from the shared financial context of the group, a specific fear activates in the people who love them. The fear is not about money. The fear is about abandonment. If you become financially different from us, will you still be one of us? If you build something we cannot access, will you still want to be here? If money starts to separate your life from our life, will you use that separation to leave? This fear is rarely stated directly. It gets expressed instead as criticism of the financial behavior itself. You are being irresponsible. You are too focused on money. You are missing out on life right now by optimizing for some future that is not guaranteed. The criticism sounds like practical objection. It is actually a loyalty test in disguise. What the person is really asking is, are you going to leave? And the financial behavior has become the proxy for that question because it is easier to criticize a budget than to say I am afraid of losing you. This mechanism is particularly powerful in two specific relationship contexts. Long friendships where shared financial context has always been part of the bond, and romantic partnerships where financial alignment was always assumed as part of the future being built together. In friendships, the loyalty test shows up as the friend who suddenly becomes critical of financial decisions that have nothing to do with them. Sam starts making comments about Jordan's choices, the vacations Jordan is not taking, the restaurants Jordan is not going to, the experiences Jordan is deferring. The comments are framed as concern. They are actually a question. Do you still want to be here with us? In partnerships, the loyalty test shows up as the partner who resists financial planning not because they disagree with the plan but because agreeing with the plan means agreeing to become a different kind of person together. And becoming different together feels like it might lead to becoming different apart. Understanding the loyalty test does not make it easier to experience, but it changes what responding to it looks like. The response to a practical objection is a better argument. The response to a fear of abandonment is reassurance, presence, and patience, not a spreadsheet. Now here is the research anchor for what we have been describing. Leon Festinger's Social Comparison Theory, published in 1954 and replicated across decades of subsequent research, established that people use upward social comparisons, comparing themselves to someone doing better, as a motivational tool when they believe the gap is closable, and as a source of distress when they believe it is not. The people in your life who are responding to your financial progress with discomfort are not doing so because they are small or jealous or bad people. They are doing so because the comparison has become uncomfortable and they have not yet found a way to make it motivating. Research on identity economics, the field pioneered by George Akerlof and Rachel Cranton, documents how people make economic decisions based not just on material outcomes but on what those decisions say about who they are. When your financial decisions diverge from the group's financial identity, the people in the group are not just watching you make different choices. They are watching their own identity become more complicated. And the research on in-group and out-group dynamics in social psychology consistently shows that when a member of a group starts to behave differently from the group norm, even in ways that have nothing to do with group membership, the group often responds with pressure to conform, not out of malice, out of the deep human need to maintain the coherence of the shared identity. You are not doing anything wrong. You are triggering ancient social machinery that was never designed to accommodate personal financial growth. Here's the uncomfortable truth that most personal finance content never touches. Some relationships will not survive your financial growth. Not because you changed in the ways the people around you feared. Not because money made you a different person. Not because you abandoned anyone. But because some relationships were always conditional on a specific kind of sameness that your growth has made impossible to maintain. A friendship built on shared financial struggle does not automatically become a friendship built on divergent financial trajectories. A partnership built on shared financial avoidance does not automatically become a partnership built on financial deliberateness. A family dynamic built on collective financial modesty does not automatically expand to accommodate a member who starts building seriously. Some of these relationships will adapt. The people in them will find a new equilibrium. They will work through the mirror effect and the identity threat and the equality disruption and the loyalty test and emerge with something that is different from what it was but real and worth having. These are the relationships worth investing in actively. Some will not adapt. They will narrow and cool and eventually become something less than they were, not through a dramatic rupture but through the quiet accumulation of small distances that never fully close. These losses are real, and they deserve to be grieved. But they are not your fault. You did not destroy a relationship by building wealth. You revealed its conditions. Here is the framework I want to give you for navigating this. 3 specific things that make a difference in how these relationships evolve. First, name the mechanism, not the behavior. When Sam makes a pointed comment about a vacation Jordan is not taking, Jordan's instinct might be to defend the financial decision. That conversation goes nowhere. The better response is to address what is actually happening, not the comment about the vacation, but the fear underneath it. The conversation that matters is, I am not going anywhere. What we have is not at risk because my financial life is changing. That conversation reaches the actual question being asked. Second, do not perform poverty to maintain comfort. The instinct to hide financial progress, to downplay the investment account, to not mention the debt payoff, to pretend the budget does not exist, comes from a genuine and understandable desire to protect the relationship from the discomfort your progress creates. But hiding your financial reality to make others comfortable is a performance that costs you something real and helps no one long term. The relationships that matter can handle the truth of where you are. The ones that cannot are telling you something important. Third, expand the comparison group deliberately. One of the most powerful things you can do for both your financial progress and your social well-being is to build relationships with people who are also building wealth deliberately. Not to replace the existing relationships, but to have context in which your choices are normal, in which you do not have to explain or defend or hide what you are building. The relationships where your financial growth is not a source of friction are the ones that will sustain you through the period when others are adjusting. Jordan made 2 decisions in year 3. The first was to have the conversation with Sam that neither of them had been able to start, not about money, but about the friendship itself. About what each of them wanted it to be. About the fear that the divergence was a threat, when it did not have to be. That conversation was hard. It was also the most honest one they had had in years. The friendship is different now than it was before. It is also more real. The second was to stop hiding. To stop performing the version of financial life that kept everyone comfortable. Not to announce the investment portfolio at every dinner. Just to stop apologizing for the choices that were building something real. Here's the reframe I want to leave you with. The people who get weird when you start building wealth are not villains. They are people who love you and are scared, and do not have language for what they are feeling. The mirror effect and the identity threat and the equality disruption and the loyalty test are not evidence that the relationships are broken. They are evidence that the relationships are being asked to grow in a way they have not grown before. Some of them will. Some of them will not. Both outcomes tell you something true about what the relationship was and what it can become. And in neither case is the truth a reflection of your worth, or your choices, or your right to build the financial life you are building. You are not doing anything wrong by getting better with money. The people around you are not doing anything wrong by finding it difficult. Everyone is responding to a set of mechanisms that nobody warned any of you about. Now you have the names for the mechanisms, which means you have something most people building wealth never get: a map of what is happening and a way to navigate it that is honest and kind, and does not require you to choose between your financial growth and the people you love. I am not a therapist, and none of this is relationship advice. These are just patterns I have watched play out with real people and real relationships attached. Take what is useful and leave the rest. If this names something you have been feeling in a specific relationship, drop a comment and tell me which of the 4 mechanisms you recognize most clearly. I actually read every single one. And if you want to see the video on why most people sabotage themselves right before their first 100,000, it is right there on your screen. That one hits differently after this one. I will see you in it.